You never, ever, and even to these days, I mean, these kids are now 10 years removed, if not more. You don't see one Patrick Henry guy, or you didn't see one guy ever by themselves. They're still family.
That's the voice of Larry McKenzie, one of the all-time greats to coach basketball in Minnesota, specifically North Minneapolis. He's just one voice heard in this episode of One Hunnit and One, a special feature of the GoMN One Hunnit Podcast.
I'm a winner. I'm a warrior. I'm a champion. I refuse. Salute. I refuse. Salute. One team.
You want the perfect metaphor for life? Look to sports. In Minnesota, those metaphors are lived to reality each and every day. And no two high school programs represent that reality better than arch-rival basketball teams in Minnesota's biggest city, Minneapolis Patrick Henry and Minneapolis North. One man has coached both schools to state titles. But this man's story is more than basketball and championships. It involves visiting former players in prison, feeding starving teammates, and overcoming the odds. Larry McKenzie's life is North Minneapolis, and he refuses to lose.
Champions, whether that's on the football field, on the basketball court, champions in life have to do more than other folks. Otherwise, you don't end up on top. So it was just part of building character in those young men.
We haven't even come close to the part of the story where a player on the team was stealing French fries from the school cafeteria just to help feed his family. That's coming. But first, you have to know about the Patrick Henry North rivalry and what makes it special.
You know what? It's because there is, in households, there's moms and dads, there's brothers and sisters, there's cousins. You know, they live next door to one another. And, you know, I mean, I just think it enhances that rivalry because it's all about family. You know, in the end, it's really all about family. And it's about at the end of a football game, at the end of a basketball game. I mean, who gets bragging rights? You know what I'm saying? Who's going to own the house for that particular night or that particular week? But it's just that neighborhood, you know, kind of rivalry. I mean, who's the best on the north side?
He made it sound like a basic rivalry, but it's a lot more, and it goes way deeper for McKenzie.
And I'm going to tell y'all, excuse my French, but I don't just want to win tonight. Y'all know that, right? So I want to embarrass them. I want y'all to leave out there with your left leg or your right leg stinking. You know why it's going to be stinking? Because it's going to be so far up their ass. All right? That's the way I want to go play tonight. That's the way I want to go play tonight. That's the way I want to go play tonight. We ain't just trying to win. We trying to embarrass them.
That's McKenzie as head coach of Minneapolis North in 2015, just moments before North went on to beat Patrick Henry. A dozen years earlier, he was leading Patrick Henry to a state record 4 consecutive championships. The 2016 state title ended a streak of 13 years without either rival winning a championship, and Henry's 08 team was the only team during that 13-year period to simply get to state. That's unimaginable for city basketball fans. Let's go back a little farther. Patrick Henry finished at or near the bottom of the Minneapolis City Conference every year from 1992 to 96. At the same time, North owned the city and owned the state, winning 3 titles in a row, 1995, 96, and 97.
And that was when Minneapolis North took the ultimate prize.
That's Henry Lake. He worked in the Minneapolis school systems for 15 years. He knows Minneapolis basketball like the back of his hand.
And I think from that point moving forward, I think a lot of people looked at Minneapolis North and they said, you know what? They were, when they pared it down, he had one champion. That's the team that we ultimately want to strive to beat. And so at that point, Minneapolis North was absolutely the team with the target on their back. And so that's the reason why that rivalry became big, and that's the reason why so many other teams were gunning for.
Leading the way for the Polars was a pudgy little point guard who grew up shooting hoops in McKenzie's driveway.
I have a dream.
Khalid El-Amin used to shoot in our driveway in the backyard. I mean, when Lawrence was growing up, I mean, that was who he looked to. That was, who he idolized coming up. And yeah, I mean, if I don't go to Henry, I mean, Lawrence ends up at North High Street. And then that group of guys, I mean, no question, when they didn't want to just beat any team, that it was about making history.
Whoa. Hold up. So had McKenzie not coached at Patrick Henry, his son, Lawrence McKenzie, one of the all-time great North Minneapolis players from the early 2000s, would have gone to North. Instead, he was winning titles at Patrick Henry.
I mean, I watched Khalid growing up my whole life, and I knew North was a big thing. I didn't really even know about Henry until, like I said, my pops ended up getting the job over there.
Make no mistake, that's a critical point in the story. Had McKenzie not started coaching at Patrick Henry, North would have dominated even longer.
Yeah, that's definitely. I was a fan. I was at the games. I was at the North and Henry games, going for North before. So I was definitely a fan. I mean, with Khalid El-Amin, he lived up the street from me too. But you, as a basketball player, how could you not be a fan? You know what I mean? It's something that great. So
instead of piling on, McKenzie and a deep roster of talented players stormed the state and wrote their own story. You might remember some of the star players on those early 2000s Henry teams. Zarek Knight.
Take flight. Call him Take Flight Knight.
When he went up, nobody went with him.
And I remember the first thing that came to my mind is the alley-oop as my sophomore year, his junior year. For the state tournament, I had the little baby afro, and I threw it from half court, and he caught it like from his hip. And the crowd went crazy. Like, that's something I'm going to remember forever.
Johnny Gilbert,
one-man defensive stopper. I mean, we were successful because we could take all kind of chances out front on the perimeter, because even if you made a mistake, Johnny Gilbert was going to throw it into the stand. A beast. My all-time favorite player.
Workhorse, dependable. That's who Johnny was. Somebody, I actually went to college with him too. I followed him over to Oklahoma, but workhorse, dependable, beast. That's what I think about when you say Johnny Gilbert.
Terry Pettis.
So our mantra has always been refuse to lose. And if I was to put that in Wikipedia in the dictionary, you would see Terry Pettis pitching.
His heart could take over his skill ability and his athletic ability. Like, that's how much heart he had. Like, he believed in himself so much that it was sometimes annoying, but when he got on that court, he just figured out a way. He wasn't going to out-jump you. He wasn't going to be quicker than you. He just figured out a way, and he would, get buckets. So I would just say that as a basketball player, man, the biggest heart that I ever seen.
Gilbert went to Oklahoma, played college basketball, and went to a Final Four. He played pro for 10 seasons in Europe. Knight played at Tennessee Martin. McKenzie played at Oklahoma with Gilbert before transferring to play for the Gophers. He had a short stint in the pros and now makes a living as a local rapper and hip-hop artist in the Twin Cities, a.k.a. Mac Irv. But Pettis, he's been in prison for a decade.
I didn't believe it at first. I didn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, come on, man, that's GP. Like, we know we talk a lot, but he ain't really gonna do, you know what I mean? He ain't really gonna do that, man, And, when I found out it was true, it was just kind of heartbreaking.
Pettis graduated from Patrick Henry and was on the rise at Fresno State as a basketball player, but the story took a turn for the worse. According to ESPN, Pettis dropped out of college in 2004. Not long after, he was the 19-year-old pulling the trigger of a gun that killed a female student in a drug deal gone wrong in California.
But she went to jail when he was 19 years old, and you know what I mean? Just think about a 19-year-old. Like, as I'm now 32, I think about a 19-year-old kid that won't see the light of day. It was just a horrible decision that he made, but it's a sad story because he had so much potential, and I saw that. I was like, man, when I was watching him, I'm in Oklahoma, I'm watching him play. I'm like, man, TP might go to the league this year. Like, man, he's balling. Like, he's doing his thing. And then, that ended up happening, man.
May 26th, 2006, Pettis was convicted of first-degree murder and armed robbery. His sentence, life in prison without parole.
To be very, very honest with you, the first thing that I thought about, what could I have done differently? What could I have said differently? it's interesting because I did get a chance to go out and visit Terry recently for his birthday. And at that visit, I mean, one of the things, you know, we spent all day Saturday with him and all day Sunday with him. And on Sunday, Terry looked at me and his dad and he said, I need to say something. He said, I need both of you all to know that, you know, I own this. I made the mistake. I knew better because I had my dad and because I had my coach. And so I don't want either of you guys to feel anything about this. And the thing during that visit, I mean, you know, it was hard to see him there, but I can tell you, I mean, Terry has made lemonade out of lemons. I mean, he's running all of the recreational programs in the facility that he's in. He's working with the warden. He's helping people get out. He's a mentor. He's a leader. You know, he's doing all of those things. And I think, you know, if there's a guy that's remorseful or who understands, you know, he made a, you know, and I think the thing that I'm hoping that one day Terry will get an opportunity to come get out here and tell a story and share it with kids in North Minneapolis and in inner city kids all across the country, because here's a kid that at the time, you know, was on the NBA radars who had over 3.0 grade point average, got around the wrong people and made a 30-second mistake that has cost him 13 years of his life.
Terry Pettis is now 33 years old. He was admitted into prison in California July 19th, 2006. He's currently held at Salinas Valley State Prison, which is about 135 miles south of San Francisco on the west side of California. Even though Pettis did what he did, he's still family to the McKenzies. It's been that way ever since they were back in high school, dominating on the hardwood.
You never, ever, and even to these days, I mean, these kids are now 10 years removed, if not more. You don't see one Patrick Henry guy, or you didn't see one guy ever by themselves. They're still family.
On the local hip-hop scene, Lawrence McKenzie's known as Mac Irv, and Terry Pettis is in his music. I asked him if there's a song he's ever wrote specifically for his lifelong friend.
Hold on.
That's McKenzie, remembering lyrics as he thinks.
Actually, you know what? I got a whole song about, like, the experience.
On the run, gun in my hand, foot on the gas. Then I just killed a nigga over petty cash. Them sirens ringing from a block over. I only got a couple minutes for them cops show up. I ain't wanna pull the trigger, just stepped up my pivot. Now over that 1 minute, I'm looking at a life sentence. First time a nigga cried in a minute. The moment that I realized that I'd probably die in prison.
And I give my perspective of what he was thinking during this whole time that this thing happened. That you know what I mean, and before I even put it out, I made sure to send it to his family and send it to his brother, and they liked it. You know what I mean? They liked it, and they thought it was very creative.
Pettis' story is one that Coach McKenzie doesn't want to see anybody make, especially the kids he's mentoring on the north side of Minneapolis. And for a lot of kids, growing up on the north side can be a painful experience. Both McKenzie and Henry Lake understand.
Yeah, I've been devastated personally from seeing and having to feel the effects of what some of these young people have gone through.
They just see so much of those things that are not good for them. You know, more, I hate to say it, but more evil than good. Our kids don't see every day the businessmen, folks getting up, going to work, doing all of those kind of things that are important. And even in 2017 and 18, believe it or not, I still have kids that are going to be the first one in their families to graduate from high school, first one to go to college.
That's one thing. An entirely different problem is hunger, and it impacts a lot of kids.
Even last year, a championship team, I mean, people see the kids run up and down and all of that kind of stuff. We had 4 homeless kids on our team. And we had to make sure every day in the practice, before we got those kids home, we had to make sure that those kids was fed, because the shelter that those kids were at, well, if you weren't there by 6:30, you didn't eat. Well, we don't start practice until 6. how many coaches are dealing with a situation where they got to make sure kids are fed, you know what I'm saying, or help with shelter or those kinds of things, instead of just worrying about X's and O's.
But at the same time, that's when you invest more in the young people and know that whatever you give them and whatever you do for them is going to make tomorrow a better day for them.
Some of the stories are unimaginable, and you wouldn't know they're happening basically in your backyard.
I mean, I've had that. I can tell you that same story when in a school that Lawrence went to. I got involved with a kid who, mother had been on a 2-week crack binge. And, I mean, this kid was the oldest of 3 siblings, and they were actually eating cereal and water every day. And I ended up overhearing and got involved with the family. But I'll even tell you, you talk about those great themes and some of the challenges. I got involved in a situation where that kid was being suspended from school for stealing French fries out of the cafeteria. And so I'm sitting with the assistant principal, and I'm like, okay, I get that the kid was stealing, but do you understand why? Well, we go to the kid's house, and the refrigerator is empty. Mom and dad are both unemployed. I have to say, thank God for basketball. I mean, this kid was able to get out of here and get a Division I scholarship, and great things has happened in his life.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. The sad thing is it's a reality of where we grow up at. We don't have the best surroundings and the best resources at times. And I knew friends who, when I would go over, like, I couldn't come over and spend the night because the lights were out. Or they didn't. Their fathers wasn't around. Or their mom were. I seen people when their uncles and their mom were doing drugs and stuff like that. So I was able to see that, and it's a sad reality of the community that we're from.
Which is exactly why basketball is more than a game in North Minneapolis. As cliche as that is, that's true.
I think with basketball, and I really believe this reason, like, we were so great because at sometimes some people felt that's all they had. Was that, like, you know what I mean? That was a way to escape, and I think that's what happens a lot in the urban community. You use sports as a way to escape your true reality. You know what I mean? And it's tough to come back to that, but that stuff happens all the time, and that's why it's hard for me. Like, I don't judge people and what they do in their decision, because you never know where they're coming from, and what lessons they have to learn to become the person that they need to be in the future. You know what I mean? We all don't have the opportunity and the resources to get stuff right away. People come from different backgrounds. And like I said, I've seen that a lot. I've heard about it a lot where I grew up at.
Do you see why basketball on the north side is so important to so many people?
What would be your defining moment, your legacy? What would they say about you?
Larry McKenzie refused to lose as a basketball coach at Patrick Henry. He won 4 state titles. He left to coach outside of the city for a handful of years, but now he's back, refusing to lose at Minneapolis North. But through it all, he's refusing to lose or give up on the youth in his community. That's a legacy.
And this is about Northside. This is about Northside. This is our opportunity tonight to make the non-believers believers.
After 4 championships at Patrick Henry High School, McKenzie still lives in North Minneapolis, and now he's won 2 championships at Minneapolis North High School. He says he'd love to get 2 more. Subscribe, rate, review, and download the GoMN One Hunnit Podcast and special features like this episode of One Hunnit One, wherever you download your podcast. Check us out especially on Podbean.
One team! One team! One team! One team! One team! Yeah!